I don't want to inundate our meeting with just my topic. So, what is on your mind?
Uh, I have all kinds of things on my mind. But I'm curious, right? Because what's on my mind to begin with is Eric and I had two streams this week where we were just like, we're going to chew on stuff and stream it. And I know his net quality was meaning he was a bit robotic at times, but I know we had really good chats, and I haven't actually looked back at them to edit and see whether I'm going to actually preserve it yet. So I'm curious. You've watched them, you've listened to them. Did you enjoy them?
Yeah. So yes, you're right. Sometimes the sound quality from Eric was not that good, but actually it was not really disturbing. It was like at certain intervals, I had to think myself what he would probably wanted to say, but I could follow the whole conversation nonetheless. So this was not really a problem. And so for me, as I said before, like the most important thing is, can I listen to the whole thing while I'm working on something, like
Yeah.
going through my emails and things? And that worked perfectly well. So I listened to both streams completely. The one was 1.5 hours and the other was 2.5 hours. And I listened to both of them the next morning when I was just doing my normal email routine. And I could follow the whole conversation while working. And so I also had the Miro board open and could look at that. But the screen share that was recorded all along the way was also like, sufficient for me to follow that. So I would say this is the ideal format, at least for me, for following things later on when they are recorded. And by the way, I really learned a lot. Like, it's so different, really, how you and Eric are approaching um, larger transformations. This is so different that it's. I really need these streams to dive into your world and to understand where you're coming from and why you're thinking that way. And so, for me, this is invaluable having these conversations. And if there had been more, I would have listened to more.
We were meant to do another one Friday, but we went like the one on my LPM stuff was my Wednesday night, and we wrapped up about 1:30 a.m. and I had to wake up at 6 a.m. to catch a train to spend a day with a client. And of course, I hung up on the call with Eric. My brain is going a million miles an hour, so it took me an hour to get to sleep. Um, Big day on site with the client. Got back Thursday night. Went, I haven't got the energy for anything creative. So um, the Friday morning plan call came around. It's like, dude, I haven't done anything more since we spoke. So he went and hung out in the sunshine. Uh,
But so for me, this is a part that when I'm listening to your conversations, this is a part that I was completely missing. It's like it never occurred to me to approach a larger transformation from from that angle. And so it's like a different world opening up for me. I was always like I'm an engineer by heart, so this is not by chance that I studied electrical engineering, because like this is I want to get my hand dirty, and I really want to have mechanical parts in a larger conversation, just not with like hardware, but in this case with communication and collaboration structures. But approaching the whole transformation from the angle of portfolio and how you spend your money, how you create the guardrails within which you can then set up the network structures. This was always something that it was there, of course, but it was never something that I deliberately cared for. Not in like, of course, I know what's in the SAFe framework, and I read the books and everything, but this was sufficient for me for a long time because I never had deeper conversations on these things And now that I'm listening to you and listening to like the insights that you had over the years of how you did that and what occurred to you when you thought about it, this is now I have a complete different, how should I say, appreciation for that. It's really it's something that I now, as I'm listening to you, I miss that. But back then, like a couple of weeks ago, if you have asked me, I would probably not had the idea that I missed anything.
Look, it's I think it's like so many things. You wind the clock back 10 years. I had no clue about any of that. Right? Somebody had some money and I had to help them make it work. Um, and then I rolled forward a few years and it was like somebody had some money, they were scared it might get taken away. I had to make them work, help them make it work. And then I'd talk to guys and they go like, Mark, portfolio, portfolio, portfolio. I mean, like, dude, it's just about great teams and great trains. You know, great teams, great trains, kick goals, get traction, change the world. And get stuck in the portfolio. And then when I started playing there, it was like, oh, this is how it works. Yeah, because the reality is so different from the simplified versions you hear. Yeah.
But even like basic things like what you described with the spending cycles, like you have a certain annual budget and there are quarters where you spend more and quarters where you spend less, and the reason why. Of course, I could relate to that when you talked about it, but did it occur to me before? No, I hadn't had a clue to look at this from that angle. And so even these, I would say, minor revelations are really valuable for me.
Good. All right. So then that test of is it interesting to listen to in the background? And that's kind of what Dave Eva has been saying. That's what he does, is he puts it on while he's doing other stuff.
Yeah.
Which I guess if we're going to be streaming hour after hour after hour, it has to be something that you get value out of in the background. So
And the recording has the benefit that you can go back to when you didn't really understand something, and then you just replay that, maybe just a couple of minutes, and maybe listening to that twice or three times, so that you get at least a bit of a feeling what you or Eric meant. So that also helps a lot. So it has a benefit even beyond the normal conversation that we are recording that, at least for me.
cool. All right. Well, I left Eric with the choice on whether he was going to edit his down and stick it on YouTube, but sounds like it's worth my while going back and editing down my LPM chat.
So I think if we do more of that, then probably like we will start to think differently about the conversations that we have, and probably we will approach things differently than like right now. It's more like a normal casual conversation, which is a great thing to have. But I suppose, and I'm curious whether this happens or not, when we do that more often, then we think beforehand more like, what is the thing that I want to talk about, or what are the arguments that I could throw in on a certain topic. And so at least for me, so this is what happened for that stream right now, so that I prepared even throughout the week, and I put things on the Miro board, and had thoughts about what we could talk about, and how we could run that. And so it becomes a normal part of life. Like I constantly think about the stream, and this was something that didn't happen before. So before I just jumped on the stream, and then we had a casual conversation. But now it becomes an integrated part of my everyday life, I would say.
Okay, and it's one of those things. I think it's the fun journey of eating your own dog food, right? Because we're just learning as we go, we're iterating, we're testing. Um, I think if you look at this last week or so, it's there's a lot there, which is what I hoped we'd get as we created this community, which is just what happens when you test thinking with other experts, right? How much does it grow you? Um, but I think the other bit is starting to figure out the streams where you're going to pre-think and the streams where it's just going to be what comes, right? Because I think for both of the streams Eric and I did during the week, it was look, there was pre-thinking as one of us had something we wanted to test with the other one. But in my case, it was pretty raw what I'd put on the mirror. I just knew I wanted to test it while I was formative. But I think Saturday nights, when Eric makes it to Mexico, I think in our head is Saturday nights we start to prep and go, what's that topic?
Mhm.
And be a bit more structured, and then we leave the midweek streams to be a bit more ad hoc, including your 60 stream sessions on large solution.
Actually, I thought about in the beginning, like, if I had one session or two, what would I talk about? And then it grew and grew and grew, and I thought, hey, maybe this is also this could also be a kind of an online curriculum, where every session is a different topic. And then when I had this idea that it could be something that we could stream in addition to our Saturday stream, maybe once a week or twice a week, and I could just talk with whoever is interested for 1.5 hours on a certain topic, then it could be it's not a book, but it could, it could be like a pre-book or something where I get all the feedback. And then I started to toy around a lot with AIs and different AIs. And I now have a lot of AIs that I paid for, and and I try different workflows. What can I do with AIs? And so to get the script out of the recording is pretty easy now. So I have an AI for that. Now having like bullet points, what we talked about, is also pretty easy with like ChatGPT. You can just type in the transcript, like copy and paste the transcript into ChatGPT, then you get a summary, which could be helpful when we are putting that on YouTube so that the people know what we talked about. But it's even more than that. Like there are AIs where you are just like throwing in a bunch of words and then it gives you slides. So that could be handy when we just have a conversation about something and I want to visualize something and I'm just typing into an AI and then I have a picture where I can explain that from. And so I tried, I think, like 10 different AI tools. And now I paid for, I think, 6 or 7 of them
It's
for a
very
year.
dangerous, isn't it? Yeah.
It feels a lot like when I started programming because like back then I programmed in Basic and Assembler and later in C and C++. And so it was a complete different world, and I had to understand how the computer thinks to be able to talk with the computer in the language he understands. And now this is it feels the same. It's like, okay, I have to understand what the computer thinks when I'm typing in something into the prompt. And
I
over
I
the
have to say,
time,
by the
I
way,
think
I reckon they've hobbled ChatGPT recently. It feels like they've gone in and because I use it, I basically use it as like an enhanced Google a lot of the time.
Mhm.
Um, show me a list of this. Show me a top 5 options for that. Here's a paragraph. Give me 3 different ways I might reword it. And
Yeah.
and it's like the kind of editor sitting in my alt tab. But I noticed this week there are a lot of questions that I asked it that it hasn't dodged before that it dodged. It's like, I'm sorry, but blah, blah, blah. You might consider X. It's like, that's interesting. Like, if any prompt I gave it where I asked for references, it went, no, I can't give you references.
Okay.
Which used to be a really common thing for me, because that's what I do. It'd be like, give me 10 different thoughts on X with references. And then I'd do the summaries and I go and read 3 or 4 of the references. Gone. Gonskis. So who knows? Maybe it's, I should pay more attention, but it's fun.
So I've not really used it for that in the past, but like when I'm giving a couple of hundred words to summarize them, so that works pretty well with the new version with ChatGPT 4.
Yeah.
And so this is a lot of effort that I either wouldn't do or I would spend a lot of time. And now, like having that handy whenever I need a summary of something, and I'm just copy and paste that over. This is really cool.
It's great productivity, but we digress. Um, so in terms of chatting tonight, I had 2 topics, and then I was going to throw it into your hands. There's a bit of me going, we've got all these cool things on the streaming backlog, but I want to save them for when we've got more of us on the call. So I wanted to check in with you about your listening into Eric and my rambling. Done. Tick. I wanted to share some very cool Kanban visualization stuff that I'm seeing at the moment, and I wanted to go, hey, what do you want to talk about?
Yeah.
So
If you want to talk about Kanban, I'm always in.
I've been a visualization nutcase for a very long time. And everywhere I went, I created a great big Kanbans like the one in this photo. And I always hated all of the digital ones because I like to do things to mine. Right. So this was an art Kanban. And if I zoom in a little bit, right, you'll see all kinds of stuff going on the cards. Post-its with notes, lots of avatars for the different people who are collaborating on the card. These guys do a really cool thing where they had these little laminated cards with exit policies on them.
Mhm.
And then what would happen was when the feature moved into the swim lane, then they would grab an empty laminated card for the exit policies. And then as they cleaned up the exit policies for it, they'd just tick them off. So that you kind of knew because obviously feature might spend a week or 2 there. But you could keep an eye on what was moving well, what wasn't moving well in terms of hitting your exit policies, and you knew when you ticked off all the exit policies. That's this little kind of card here where my mouse cursor is.
But what is an exit policy for you? So is that
s-
something like acceptance criterias?
so if you think about an exit policy on a Kanban, it's what are the conditions that must be true in order for me to move to the next stage of the Kanban.
Okay. Okay. Now I know what you mean with exit policy. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, right. So this up the top here on the Kanban, that's the exit policies for each swim lane.
Mhm.
And these things must all be true before we can move on.
Mhm.
Um, so it gives you a way of understanding, right? Because you've got different threads going on when it's sitting in the state. Okay, what's traveling? If we've managed to get 4 out of the 8 things knocked over, we can see that we've knocked over 4 out of the 8 things. It's very lightweight, right? Rather than having lots of little task posters or anything like that, I'm just trying to anchor into how's the feature going. Um, so it was a really cool Kanban in terms of the anchoring of the collaborator group, because each one of these cards would have, the avatars would be a solution architect, a UX person, and a strategic BA. That was kind of the minimum combination on something.
Mhm.
They'd all have work to do in that stage. So anyway, picture these and then go, we're now in a world where nobody is ever going to build a physical Kanban again. Right. And it's kind of depressing. But it's also a reality, because even if people are in the same city, the likelihood that they're all in the office at the same time more than once a week is negligible.
Yep.
So the days of our beautiful collaboration Kanbans are gone. None of the tools, right? The Jira lines and the Azure DevOps, and you know, they're all horrible for Kanbans. None of them can do anything like this.
True.
And so we've played around, and I've seen some pretty good stuff. We've done some pretty good stuff with the Miro Kanban, using tags on the cards, and you can get a pretty nice visualization, but it's still nothing like this. You're always making choices.
Yep.
And then we were experimenting just a few weeks ago, and we made a custom Kanban, right? And what we had was, we're trying to clean up the backlog. And you start a lot of arts, you haven't really got epics that have been through an epic Kanban and supported by a lean business case. You're working on stuff, and quite often in the beginning, all you have is the name for the epic, because you need enough features to get going, and then you gradually backfill. So
Mhm.
we had all these epics in the backlog, and we're trying to get our backlog back under control. So we built the epic Kanban, and it was like, okay, where are you at with these epics? None of them had a lean business case as an epic. Um, we had different levels of information about them, but we certainly knew where in life they were,
Mhm.
and many of them were in implementing. Um, so we made this custom Kanban, and we went, okay, what we're going to do is, we can't magically fix everything overnight. Because notionally, you stick it on the Kanban, you go, all of the exit policies that came before this should be true, and go and, backfill and clean them all up. But these poor guys who were looking after it weren't going to suddenly commit themselves to writing 20 full lean business cases, um, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So we went, all right, what we ought to do is just run a sniff test. Let's look at every Kanban and go, given where it is on the Kanban, let's get a view of our clarity, right? So I picked one that was a nice, generic, non-sensitive epic, which was a business continuity plan. Um,
Mhm.
and we made a custom card, right? And we just made this card up to go, let's run this for the exercise. So we're in the middle of building a portfolio at this point. So we had guardrails in the portfolio. So we wanted the guardrail to go with the epic name, brief summary of the epic. And then we went, all right, information we should know. We should know who the customers are, who the stakeholders are, what the outcomes and benefits are, the size and cost, the scope, the architectural solution, whether there are any data governance concerns, and whether there are any security concerns. And if so, what are they?
Great.
Right. And then it's like, let's just do a sniff test for each epic to go, what's our state of clarity? And we know that if it's in the funnel, we don't mind if it's a very low state of clarity. But if it's in implementing and there's a low state of clarity, we're going to get kind of concerned. Um, so we made these up, and we headed them back to the epic owners, and we went, all right, go through all of your epics and just do a sniff test. Where's it at? You know who the customers are. You know who the stakeholders are. You've got reasonable confidence on the outcomes and benefits. The scope is a constant moving feast. Um, you got reasonable ideas what the architectural solution is. You got no idea what security think about it, and you know more than you ever wanted to know about what data governance wants, right? So,
Yep.
so you can very easily do a sniff test. And what we were doing was we were trying to just literally run an exercise to say, let's prioritize the things we're going to clean up about our epics. And we'll find our smells, and then we'll create a priority list of smells we want to fix, because they smell very bad and the smell's starting to hurt.
I like that.
And then what we did was, this was actually the card on the kanban, right? So it wasn't a classic, ticket on a feature kanban. This was the card. This, by the way, kind of starts to look like it's got information like these things had, right? Um, and it worked beautifully. And then the guys started using it, right? Because what they went on a like smell fixing thing. And unbeknownst to us, we just literally done, we want it as a kind of easy mechanism of doing a first pass. And then we noticed that we'd look back at a card 2 days later, and we'd find that they'd kind of moved outcomes and benefits up to very good. It's like, what's happened? Did we change our mind? Did we find out something new? And they're like, no, we went and fixed it. It doesn't smell anymore. Um, so then we took this, it's like, well, this is actually a really nice Kanban card. What if we make our epic Kanban just manually drawn in Miro? And what this is that's the ticket, right? Well, it would be the ticket if I hadn't broken the grouping when I put it on this Miro. But if you think about that as the ticket that moves, life starts to get good.
Mhm.
And then people started riffing on it. Because there's another team, and it's a team that does integrations, right? And they've just literally moved to Kanban because their backlog was just full of tasks. And it's like, well, what's indivisible is the integration. And they do a very lightweight integration. So it's data feeds. They create an empty integration, and then you come back later and go, I'd like to add things to the integration. So I'll go and pump more stuff in. So it's like, all right, we'll go to a scenario that says the story is the integration. And what's the life cycle for your integrations? Well, this is the Kanban life cycle, stages that the story goes through. And then it's like, well, what are we going to do with that? And we did a whole bunch of work with them on, because what they said was, we've got a recipe. Every integration follows the same path. If it's one of 3 pre-approved patterns, or we can solve it one of 3 pre-approved patterns, it's the same thing every time. And otherwise, if we can't do it in pattern, it becomes a bit more complicated. So, okay, that's cool. So okay, well, let's talk about the things you do, and we worked up their exit policies. And so their exit policies start to look like this, right? This is a pretty early one. A lot of their world is getting pre-commitments from the source system. Go figure for an integration. So getting the pre-commitments sorted out, they've got approval to access the data from the information asset owner. They've confirmed their external dependencies. They've confirmed the timelines from the external dependencies. They've got access to SMEs from the source system locked in for when they go to do their work, so on and so forth. That's your exit policies for your pre-commitments lifecycle step. And what they did was that they made these cards, and it was inspired by the visual Kanban I started with, where we used to laminate the cards and stick them on. And what they basically do is a docking system. So the bit of the card that moves is literally just, hang on a second, I'll show you the bit of the card that moves. Where we go. I've got to get out of the habit of alt tabbing.
So the mirror board that you're showing is not something that I have access to. It's just your mirror board, right?
No, this is the stream mirror at the moment. I copied stuff on. If I zoom out, right, that's the one that you should be on, the stream mirror board. So
Okay.
actually,
Now I have it. Yeah, I'm on.
so that's actually all that moves. When the thing is done, I'll just group it. This is the bit that moves across the columns. And then when it moves in, they attach an empty exit policy block. And then they track it. And they're actually using color coding, right? So if I'm having trouble with the discovery template, I can just flag it up and say, discovery template's got problems, design solution's okay, but we're still working on pattern upliftment. And so we're getting these kanbans that are like, this is everything I ever could have done sitting in an office with paper and post-its and laminators. It's the most beautiful visualization. And the team are just loving it because there's so much clarity for them. I sit there and I was checking in with the Scrum Master the other day and he's like, it's so beautiful, Mark, stand-ups. Our stand-ups always used to be, what tasks am I working on? And now it's like, how are we going with Apollo? And everybody's like, oh, we're in good shape for this. We're struggling with that. We're in great shape for this. And so all these teams that are building visualizations are riffing off each other. The team that's building out their art Kanban looked at this team and what they'd done with this and went, oh, okay. So we're getting to this point of going, I can build good old style Kanbans like that. I can build them in Miro. And they're putting mirrors of it into they're using Azure DevOps at this place. They're not a Jira shop, but they're putting bare minimums of the tickets in there so that they can get their process time, lead time, delay metrics out. Everything else is going in Miro, but they're getting these just spectacular old school visual management tools by creating custom cards and just hand drawing the Miro instead of the Kanban. So that was my Kanban sidetrack. I was just like,
I love it.
I love when I see an idea start, right? And this was literally, me sitting with a couple of people going, how on earth are we going to get our hands around all this stuff? But let's start with a sniff test and a visualization for how the sniff test is going to work. And then everything's just kind of riffed and riffed and riffed from there. So pretty good.
So this ties into something that I was struggling with for a while now, because there is this idea of Kanban boards from like teams being. You may have a Scrum team with 10 people, and you have a team Kanban board, and you picture the flow of value through the team's contribution on that Kanban board in a pretty concise way. Now, when it comes to the art level, and this is also what you see in the safe slides, it's not that easy for me because it just shows a typical Kanban flow. But usually there are a lot of things happening on art level saying, hey, there may be a different flow for a certain item, for a certain feature or whatever, which differs from the flow of another. And especially when you have different environments like software, hardware combined, or when there is a complete different feature, say a security feature or a customer support feature running through the same Kanban board like a hardware feature or whatever.
Yeah.
Now, for me, the way out was always saying, hey, this is just a template. This is just an idea that you should have something on train level. But actually, it usually helps to create a Kanban board, maybe a separate Kanban board for a certain thing, which lives for a while, and when that thing dies, or when the thing is done, the Kanban board dies. Now, it could be that you have several things that are running through the same stream, so to speak. And so the Kanban board may be empty for a while because nothing of that work item type is right now in flow. And yes, you should have somehow an overarching understanding of what is actually happening in the whole train. But it can be beneficial to start with smaller initiatives on the train, like just certain feature types. And then you may have 5 or 7 different Kanban boards on art level, combining or coordinating the collaboration of several teams, maybe not all of the teams. And then from these Kanban boards, from the 5 or 7 Kanban boards that you have, you then can more easily derive a Kanban board with the commonalities of all these boards that then visualizes the whole effort that you're doing on art level. Now, this is sometimes hard when people are not that deep in Kanban. They want just to have a visualization tool that replaces the reports and not necessarily something that is a coordination of the effort of maybe single individuals, not even teams, who have to contribute to a certain item.
Yeah.
Now, with this method that you showed, I think it's easier to do that. Like it's when you think like as a didactic method, it's an easier approach to separate concerns, so to speak, to say, no, we have different flows for different items, and we can move these different different tasks to do into the exit policies. So I really have to think about that, because for me, I mean, it's a good entry point what SAFe does, and it shouldn't be more than an entry point.
Yeah.
But when it really comes to, you have 120 people on the train, and you have a complicated, not just software where everything is like the same unique flow, but you have a more complicated system, then there is not a lot of guidance in the SAFe material. And when you go to other materials like Kanban University, of course there is guidance, but you really have to dig deep. And it's not like if SAFe is not sufficient, then you can go somewhere else and you immediately have an answer. It's like when SAFe is not sufficient, then probably you really have to study a lot before you can come up with your own answer. Now, this could be a didactic method that helps people to get out of this, we have to have one unified flow for everything. And this is why I really love that. So thank you.
Absolute pleasure. It's I've been a nutcase for flow visualization forever. And you know, the number of different crazy visualizations we built over time to support whatever the conversation was we wanted to have. And you know, I initially thought, oh, we'll get back to it. We'll get back to it. And you know, I've now come to acknowledge we won't. We'll never be back. Like we literally, anytime we'd be creating seating plans, everybody would be scouting for where was the wall space, because wall space for visualization was everything. And we did a lot of mucking around. I'm sure, you know, if you dig into the kind of Kanban University stuff, I've played with Kanban systems, which the metaphor I use is dominoes. You know, when you watch those videos of the people who have crazy domino designs, and there's like a string of dominoes that flows, and then that breaks into 3 strings that trace different patterns, and then they join back up again, and uh, you know, you get these beautiful domino patterns. We we played with multi-level kanbans like that. It's like it travels a dispatch size here, and then it sits and it flows through 3 other different systems, and then eventually those 3 systems rejoin back to here, and then, you know, on a physical wall you could stack the 3 systems up side by side, and but that notion of you've got exit policies, and you can vary your exit policy by class of service. Um, and you also have a thing that says some tickets, you know, do you need a security review? Yes. Is the security review lightweight, heavyweight, or a tick and flick? That can be ticket by ticket, but you know it's still going to be there in the exit policy. Um, so you can give yourself a certain level of abstraction in the flow. Say, this is going to be a stage it goes through, but there's going to be a completely different set of activities for different types of ticket based on the class of service.
Yeah. And in a way, it's like back to the roots. It's like what a Kanban card was meant to be in the beginning, like in the Toyota production system. It's more like a request for something. I
Yeah.
need these. Can you provide me that?
Yeah.
And so when you look at this, the initial card that you showed with the 5 different stages, very low, low, medium, good, very good. It's
Yeah.
like a request. It's like, hey, maybe we are not that good in size and cost yet. Hey, here, this is the Kanban card. Go fetch it. Like, get the information somewhere. I love the idea. But that reminds me that the 64 lessons that I sketched out for the large solution doesn't even mention Kanban yet. And probably these would also be a couple of discussions necessary for Kanban on large solutions.
All right, so enough of my topics. What would you like to talk about tonight?
So the primary thing that was on my mind was when I wrote, when I sketched down the curriculum outline for large solutions, when I thought, hey, maybe this is something that could be within shaping agility. It could be a stream on its own. Like it could run on a different day and with maybe different people. I don't know. And it could be a regular date, saying every Wednesday there is, or I don't know, every Thursday there is a 1.5 hour session, and so people can, if they are interested, return and the knowledge that we have discussed in one session like carries over to the next session. So it's like a consecutive stream of thoughts where the knowledge grows with every session that we have. I don't know whether this is too much, right? Like at the beginning where we are right now, but then I had the idea that this could be something that could replace the old format of going to classrooms and sitting there learning about large solution stuff or about anything, and like trying to get the feedback early on and trying to make it a more interactive thing where there is not a certain standard set of slides where everyone has to like follow the same slides, but that over time certain topics are revisited and redrawn. And I don't know, it could lead to a book or something, but it could also be on its own, just chatting about different aspects of large solutions. But when I ended up with the 64 topics that I think are really essential for getting the idea of how large solutions are run, and I don't know what to take out.
So I just found the area on the Miro where you dropped it all in. At least I think I did.
Yep, exactly.
Solution area, solution trains,
Mhm.
8 modules, 4 lessons each. So the question I've got for you, right, is, are you thinking about literally streaming a course, right?
I don't.
Or are you thinking about driving a conversation with somebody? So, and I'll give you the commentary. I've been testing the various people that I've been saying, "Hey, watch our stream before we go public and promote it." Um, what they all come back with is it's actually the differences between us that make it interesting.
Yeah.
Um, and the fact that we will come at things from very different angles, and it's not listening to one person go, "Here's my ideas." It's
Absolutely.
the discussion and the debate. Um, at the point when it's the discussion and the debate, the notion of tackling something that's laid out. So this looks basically like the structure of the course, right? Here's
So
here's
I
the
reworked it, but yes.
um, at which point you could be literally going, who's the person you argue with about each module? Um, and how far do you get into the argument in one streaming session? Um, and what happens? I think the interesting aspect to this one for me is what happens when somebody misses one. Because you can easily turn around and go, "Hey, I'm going to stream twice a week. Um, is it Tuesdays and Thursdays at some convenient time in German time zone? Um, it's going to be the large solution show." Um, and you look for people who are going to come and go and play large solution with you in those sessions. Um, but I guess if I think about our community, we're all going to be able to miss one and just pick one up blind and argue with you, aren't we?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
So for me, it's not that I think like starting that experiment means pulling that through until the 64th session is recorded. It's more like it already changed a lot from my perspective, like how I see things, what we are doing right now. And I was wondering how my perspective would change after maybe a couple of sessions. Now, for me, there is an awful lot of value in having a unified language when we are in a large solution. Maybe this is the most important thing of all, having a unified language, because you have several hundred or maybe several thousand people who are relying on that language. Like in SAFe, everyone knows what a train is, or what a product owner is, or what an art kanban would be, or something. And this helps to unify also the thinking in a way, or at least the basic structures of an agile transformation. Now, with large solutions, the large solution material, I think this is the value that has to be there at a certain point in time, saying, hey, there's a web page, there's a book or whatever where I can go to, and this is the single source of reference,
Yeah.
so that everyone has the same understanding or can return to the book or to the web page and read it up if they have questions for that. And this is what I think SAFe is doing an excellent job on.
Yeah, it
Now,
is.
at that point in time with the large solution material, there is a lot of things that I discussed with various groups of people. And but I don't think that there is any one person with whom I have discussed every aspect of large solution material yet. And so in a way you could say um, I I use that in a lot of different transformations, but every transformation is different, and every transformation I use different aspects of it.
Yeah.
And um, now having a unified understanding or a unified language of the whole thing is something that I also have to build up first, like for myself, saying, hey, what exactly are now the standard things that really helped in several transformations, and how do we put that in a unified language? So I think in the end, it has to all become a part of a book or a part of a web page or whatever. And it could grow along with streaming conversations, discussions about these things. I don't really know whether we have to do. Yeah.
Sorry,
Oh,
just clearing my throat.
yeah. Okay. I thought you wanted to say something. I don't
No.
know whether we have to do that in that sequence, in that like in the order that I put it there. It's just like probably every aspect is worth discussing for 1.5 hours, but in the end, it should be like it should be the input of something that is then creating an additional language on top of Scrum, on top of Save, an additional language for larger, more complex problems. I don't know. So it's really not something that I would say, this is the structure that I have in mind, and this is exactly what we have to do. It's more like, okay, where could that lead to with now this new tool of streaming on Twitch and having that maybe on YouTube and building up a community? I don't know, because I've never worked in that way before, and so it's all an experiment for me.
So if you think your way through it, right? Streaming on Twitch, we figured that out. All you've got to do is get your OBS configured, and we've got to get to the point of actually sharing access to the streaming account. Editing it down onto YouTube. Well, we figured that out as well. And all you do is you run a playlist, right? Large solution playlist. There's the content.
Yeah.
So you preserve it for posterity. And you're probably a million times better at editing videos than I am, because I had to Google beginner's guide to editing videos. And all I fundamentally do is go, I trim off the rubbish at the front and the rubbish at the back. And if there's any obvious places where we suddenly get horrendously distracted, I trim those out. And then I put some chapter markers in, so there's a clue as the conversation goes in different paths. So it's a pretty lightweight edit. And it generally takes, if we talk for 2 hours on the stream, you wind up with an hour and a half. You stick in the video for YouTube. That bit's all easy. There's another bit where you go, if you ran a schedule and you went, maybe it's once a week to begin with, becomes twice a week, and you just pre-announce the topic and you look for anybody of the shaping and agility community to come and join you, then you're getting somewhere. There might be different people, different weeks. It might be that when the moment comes that you get to collaboration maps or planning conferences, that all of a sudden it's 3 or 4 people want to come. It might be other times where somebody has to feel sorry for you and make sure you got somebody to argue with. But I think this is exactly what we're about, particularly as we start to add, like, if you think now we're probably, 8 or 9 members?
Mm-hmm.
So a few of us around, and we know we all love a good geek out. And, I was just literally, funnily enough, this week, I was talking to a guy who went, I need to figure out large solution. And his organization's not using SAFe, but he's leveraging safe thinking in a problem that he's focusing on at the moment. And it's very much a large solution style problem. He's like, so do I just read the guidance articles, Mark? And I went, no, I introduce you to Wolfgang. Um, so it could well be that he'll turn up and interact with you as well a little bit.
Yeah. I'm always out for fun, so.
But I look, to me, it makes sense to go. We just plan it out. We know we've got a regular time slot Saturday nights now, which is as many of the core crew as can make it.
Yeah.
We know we do random things during the week. I reckon we can just you can just work out what time slot you're going to pick for your regular. I reckon start it at one a week. That gives you a year plus to get through it all. But I think there'll come a time where you go, maybe I'll accelerate, do a bit more than one a week. Start with one a week so you can do a bit of learning and tweaking. Pick a time and see what happens.
Thank you.
It's. I know your lessons are kind of 1 hour lessons. They'll probably turn into 2 or 3 hour streams.
Yeah. So for me, the value lies in like getting more input to creating a unified language. So in the end, the stream is something like a means to an end. It's
Yeah.
something that I want to leverage so that, like, with now toying around with AI, so I could now easily get like a transcript from the stream that we had and get the most important parts filtered out by ChatGPT or whatever, and that could be a workflow which helps getting something out for every lesson that we had, or every session that we had.
Yeah.
And so week after week, there is then a knowledge base building up, maybe a web page, and from that web page, a blog or something. We could then derive a book from that later on. I don't know,
Yeah.
but so I really love the format of just talking about things, and this is also something that I envision for a training. Like usually when I'm training, of course, like people are coming with the idea that there is a trainer giving them the wisdom of whatever material I'm teaching.
Yeah.
But for me, it's the longer I'm teaching, the more I have the feeling that it shouldn't be that way. It should be a conversation. It should be not someone giving knowledge to others, but more like we are all sitting in the same boat. We are just people. Let's talk about it. You have ideas, I have ideas. I'm bringing a certain material with me, or also a certain experience. But in the end, we have to build something together. Of course, on top of a certain standardized language. Like this would be the thing that I would like to have when I'm going to a doctor's appointment. Like it aches somewhere, and then I'm sitting down. It's not the doctor saying you have exactly that, and these are the pills. But he has a certain knowledge. I have a certain knowledge about my body, and then we're exploring that together. Saying, okay, what could it be, and what do you think? What does that match, or whatever? And this could be a different form of training that I. It's not that I'm bored with the old training style. It's just something that I have the feeling there should be something different also available. Like I taught at universities, I taught for many years with Accenture a lot of courses. Then I taught a lot of the safe courses now, and other courses like kanban courses and things. Now it feels like there should be another way for me to do that.
Look, I think there is a reality that says there are different course packaging options because different people learn different ways.
Yeah.
If you think about the conversations we have in the streams, we enjoy sitting there and teasing ideas apart, right? There are a lot of people who fall asleep at the depth that we
Probably
play
yes.
with some of our ideas. They want it condensed, they want it distilled, they want some packaged information. And I think there's a world that says all of this stuff winds up having various modalities
Yep.
in the way you make it available to people. But what I know in all of the conversations we've been having since we started the Discord community, and certainly accelerating as we stream, is we test our ideas with each other and our ideas get better for the testing.
Yep. This is true.
So, it's good fun.
Maybe it's also something that I could start asking on Discord, like asking all the people who are now in our Discord channel, like I would like to do something like that. Who would be interested, or what do you think would be an ideal format for that? Or, I don't know. Maybe this could be a first step that I can do after our call.
I reckon start playing with some timing options. So start a thread in general, play with some timing options, and I know we all have lives. If you pick timing options that are not in the wee hours of the morning Australian time, I'll come to some. So have a play, see who's interested.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, all you need is a commitment that says one person out of the group will turn up and argue with you once a week. And it could be a different person every week. So.
And what do you think about the idea deriving like a blog post from every session and creating maybe a shaping agility, or I don't know, a large solution web blog with these informations then turning into a book later on or something?
I think we all need to write more than we do.
This is true.
Yeah, look, all I can share is what I know, which is the number of Sundays that I've spent sitting there in Premiere. We have a great conversation Saturday. I spend 3-4 hours Sunday editing down with Premiere to get to the point of, oh yeah, here we are, we're done. And all these things are big commitments.
Yeah.
So committing yourself to putting out a blog post every week, that's a lot of blog posts.
Yep.
Because I think the other thing you're going to find is you get to the end of every session and go, I want to tweak my slides.
Yeah, probably.
So you've got, a stream to edit down for YouTube, and, commentary and YouTube information to add to it. You've got tweaks you want to make to your slides. There comes a moment where you're going to go, there's probably enough is enough in terms of what I'm going to do, particularly if I'm planning to one day go to twice a week.
Yep. There is truth to what you said.
But yeah, I'll be in.
For me, it's really a different world to explore. So it's really something that, of course, I watched things on Twitch before and on YouTube, but now that I'm in the role of a content creator, it's different to look at the whole thing. So I don't know where I will end up, but for now, there is a lot of energy for me in the whole thing that we're doing, and so it opened up a door that I never had before.
Yeah.
And so I right now I'm just in the mood of playing, just trying things out and see where it goes.
Oh, I'm enjoying the hell out of it too. So uh, in ways, I mean, I know. When did I dream this up? I dreamt this up in Europe, really. It was on the back of our time together in Germany. Um, and somehow or other, I'd conceived the idea of the Discord community by the time I got to London. Because I know in London I sat with David Eva and we drank a lot of beer and ate some great Indian. And I said, hey, we're going to stream. And he went, oh, great. I love Twitch. And then I started Googling and like I'm Googling for people on Twitch with serious streams. And there's like nobody on Twitch with serious streams. They're all gamers. It's like, that's all right. We'll figure it. So
There's one additional topic. So if we have time for that, I don't
sure.
know. Yeah,
Let's switch.
because
I think we've done this one.
Just the basic idea of what are the 5 steps of setting up a proper solution train. Like I'm just trying to explain that in a couple of minutes, and then you can throw all kinds of ideas at me. The first thing when you're setting up a solution train is usually you're not doing it on a greenfield environment.
Have we got a space on the Miro for this, or
we can.
Did you drop something on the Miro? Have you got something you can drop on the Miro?
No, but I can just bring post-its on the Miro for that. So I'm using a space just above what where you were. So 5 steps to setting up solution trains.
Yeah, I found you.
Great. So the first step, because usually as a solution train is something that you're building up when you already have an existing organization. I've never seen it in a different way. Like you have either already an agile transformation going on, either a Scrum or Safe transformation or whatever, or you are just a traditional environment with a normal hierarchy in place. That means there are already people who are contributing to a larger value, and now you want to set up a solution train. So the first step is collaboration maps, meaning before I'm doing anything, I'm looking at the area of the company where the transformation should happen, and I'm trying to depict the collaboration structure of the people working there. Of course, this is a dynamic thing, and we start with a snapshot in time. But this is something that I want to understand before I'm doing like any kind of transformation work.
Yep.
Like in a way, like design thinking, I want to understand the needs of the people.
Yep. All right.
And in a way, this is also like a different angle on value stream mapping, because there usually is a value that they are creating already, and now this is not a value stream mapping in the sense of we have several sequential steps, value creation steps until we create a value, but now we are looking at the collaboration landscape first, because this is already something that is established to create that value. So it's actually a kind of a value stream workshop, but from a complete different perspective, so to speak.
Yep.
The second step is identifying areas of collaboration. I'm calling that areas of collaboration, meaning now that I have this this idea of where are actually a lot of collaboration activities going on, and where are the things more decoupled, then I'm trying just on that larger map, which could be on a mirror or mural board, or really just post-its on the wall. I try to put circles around these collaboration areas. So where is the collaboration like densest, so to speak? And
So you're looking for the red string, even though they might not have red string.
yeah, so I'm like if I'm looking at that from like a customer centric point of view, saying, hey, you people, you are who are working, who are creating that value, you are the customers of this communication and collaboration structures. I want to get into a conversation, like a structured conversation, first with a collaboration map, then with identifying the areas of collaboration, so that we have a common understanding of where you really need help, or where things are already sufficient the way they are. And so usually, at least from my point of view, from my experience, the people are not really thinking about the communication and collaboration needs. They either were a part of a larger, like, top-down structure, and so they had their bosses and their peers, or they were part of a Scrum team or an Agile release train, and so the communication and collaboration structures were just given. So now there needs to be a certain, I don't know, a consciousness that we have to build up together. What are your needs? And the first is really just an interview for the collaboration map, sitting down with people, or with smaller groups, and trying to understand what the collaboration needs are. And then when we have the larger picture, then we have to have a different conversation on the larger picture, saying, now, where are the most pressing issues that you have? And usually the issues that people have are in like areas where you have a very dense collaboration.
Okay.
And so this would be the second step. And the third step is then like creating solution areas, saying, hey, now that we have a common understanding of what your needs are, and maybe even how your needs are moving in time, dynamically, then we could say, okay, where are areas of like 2, 3, or 4 teams collaborating closely together? So where does that make sense? Maybe you have single teams who are not really collaborating with others, which is also fine. But usually they don't really have a problem. But the problem arises when you have a couple of teams working together very closely.
Let me pause you here, right?
Yeah.
So is your predicate that they're already agile teams and already agile trains?
Not
Or
necessarily. It can be.
your predicate is it's a sea of people and you're
Yeah.
doing a first lump? Because where you threw me was where you said teams that are collaborating together closely, which indicates that they've already formed into teams and you're clustering teams into solution areas as opposed to identifying solution areas that you may then form teams within.
So I did both in different transformations. In some transformations I really started from the scratch, with a traditional hierarchical organization without any agile teams. And then I sat down with like single people and just made 1-hour interviews with them, saying, hey, with which people do you have to interact on a regular basis so that you are able to do your normal job? And the numbers were really high sometimes, like 40, 50, 60 people they had to interact at least on a like bi-weekly basis, so that they could do their job, get the information that they need, or provide informations to other, or get some kind of artifacts from people. And so it can be that you really start from individuals forming teams, or if you already have teams, maybe the teams are not cut in the right way. Maybe it's like a perspective that was perfect a couple of months or weeks ago, but it has to be redrawn.
Finish the 5 steps. I'm going to come back and we're going to play.
Okay. So this is all like trying to build up a common understanding. All these 3 steps that we had, it's not like there's an agile coach coming in telling the people this is the way that it works. It's more like you are telling me first with whom you have to collaborate, then how we want to address the problem of dense collaboration areas, then like forming structures within this densely collaborative areas. And now we have a common understanding of where we really need to do something about. And so like the 5th step, or this is actually a part of the 3rd step, saying, hey, now when we are creating collaboration solution areas, then probably the first thing is to synchronize events. So synchronize events, so that usually with the event synchronization, the solution areas start forming. So when you have not like 4 teams each having their individual sprint planning next to each other, but when you have synchronized sprint plannings, when you have synchronized dailies, synchronized reviews, retros, and refinements, then there is a certain sense of like I'm belonging with the team that I'm in. I'm belonging to a larger organizational structure. So, but this is still something that the teams have to figure out themselves. So, also with how to synchronize events, I'm not really doing anything, saying, "Hey, this is the way it's done." It's like you have to find that out yourself. Now, at that point in time, this is like the first time that we are really changing something. Up to that point, we just gathered information, tried to come up with an aligned understanding. Now, the 4th step is then, after they have at least a certain kind of feeling what why they are a part of a solution area and what that solution area means, now we have all other forms of synchronization, like synchronizing, and then synchronizing, in this case, roles or artifacts or other forms of collaboration. Meaning now they, after they have started to form a solution area, they can think about like, is it beneficial to have a pair programming strategy with the other teams within the solution area? Is it beneficial to have a Kanban board in common, or a backlog in common, or a definition of done? Or should we have a part of the definition of done in common, and there are parts of the definition of done that the teams have for themselves? This is something that comes later, like when after they started forming a solution area with synchronized events, then there are all kinds of things that they can synchronize if they see a benefit in that. And also, synchronizing roles means essentially just like you could rearrange the teams within a solution area whenever you see fit.
Okay.
At that point in time, you probably have, at least to a degree, a stable structure. Like the solution area now becomes a stable structure because you are starting to solve problems within the solution area. Maybe across team boundaries, but within the solution area. And the more problems you're solving within a solution area, the more stable the whole thing gets. And the 5th step is then here. building arts. Now, agile release trains are now an additional tool for collaboration, like with synchronizing events or synchronizing roles, artifacts, and collaboration. Now, arts, all these synchronization things were things that were done within a solution area. Now, building arts is then the next step, saying now that we have this idea of solution areas, now we are going into synchronizing the work across solution areas, and the agile release train is the natural thing to do, bringing 2, 3, 4 solution areas together, like the same amount essentially what you bring teams into a solution area, like 2, 3, 4 teams form a solution area, and 2, 3, 4 solution areas form an art. And now in the fifth step, you start to create an art landscape bottom up through the help of the understanding, or the like the aligned understanding between all the people, what the communication and collaboration needs are, and what the art is actually really addressing. So it's like a different form of complexity encapsulation. Like when you're forming teams, you're encapsulating complexity, then you're encapsulating more complexity when you're forming solution areas. Now with art, you have an additional level of encapsulating complexity. And as you have trained synchronizing your work within the solution area, it becomes more natural to synchronize your work across the train. Now, this is essentially the fifth step, saying now you have the agile release trains that you need to set up a solution train, because now you have a different structure underneath the agile release trains. But if you have that set up, then the solution train is the next natural step, because then it's just like one level higher of encapsulating complexity of then like 2, 3, or 4 agile release trains, like the same number that we had before. So this would be like the backbone of the presentation that I'm right now creating.
So is there is there really 6 steps? Because we haven't got a step there that says make a solution train.
So yeah, that would be the sixth step. Yeah, creating a solution train.
Arguably, I think you could probably collapse the collaboration maps and the identifying areas of collaboration, because 5 steps is cooler.
So that we have that here.
No, I would.
This one?
To be honest, I would promote this, because I look at collaboration maps and I go, that's a tool I might use as part of identifying areas of collaboration.
Okay. Yeah.
Right?
This is great.
So if I go, I'm going to identify areas of collaboration. I'm going to create solution areas, right? And you really kind of, I would argue, right? This is really mature solution areas, right?
Yeah.
Or evolve. Pick a word, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you're basically going, I'm going to tell you you're a solution area with the minimum possible wrapping.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to encourage you to grow up.
Yep.
And then I'm going to bundle you together. And then I'm going to bundle again.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Give me a timeline.
You mean
If
how long that takes in reality?
if I went, if you think about your typical implementation, make it a nice big arrow, right? How long are we talking about? Typical.
So it's all a matter of feedback cycles. So when I'm drawing the collaboration maps and identifying the areas of collaboration, I don't want to have that in one in one event or something. It's
Don't,
more.
don't give me feedback cycles. Give me idea to value.
I would say
from starting on step 1 to ending on step 5. What's your typical lead time?
so for the whole thing, like a PI, like 12 weeks, something. Yeah. Yeah.
And is that predicated on them already being, to some extent, agile as you enter the zone, and you're fixing the way that they scale their agility?
That helps, absolutely. But it's not really necessary. So, I mean, if they are not yet agile, then probably you have to have a larger coaching group, like also with additional agile coaches, with Scrum masters that are well educated and that you bring in. But you still can do that in a quarter. You just have to have maybe a different coaching capacity.
Interesting. So the reason for my reaction is I think about launching a single art, and I say to launch a single art, I need 6 to 8 weeks. And if we
Yeah.
do it in half a quarter to launch a single art, then that's 6 weeks, very intense.
Absolutely.
And you're fundamentally saying here, I'm going to launch 3 to 5 arts in that same period, in a quarter instead of 6 weeks. It's a lot of change. Maybe a big coaching team.
Yeah, that's for sure. So probably like if I had the choice, I would probably start with a smaller solution train. It really depends on the situation, but if you have a solution train with like 2 agile release trains in it, say you have like 250 people in a solution train,
Yeah.
and you can start making your experiments at first in a smaller part of the company, then it would match to the 6 to 8 weeks. Like essentially, when you have 2 trains of 6 weeks sequentially behind each other, then saying you are launching two trains in a solution train, and you are combining that to a quarter, which equates to the same. But yes, you can do that also with 4 trains. I would not recommend doing that with a lot more than 450 people, but you can do that with 450 people in a quarter. But yes, then you have to really have the capacity, the people going out, creating collaboration maps, creating feedback loops with the people. Are these really the collaboration, the understanding that of the collaboration that you have, and is that like you have to have this workshops with the people of how to synchronize your events and the artifacts, and so you have to have people who are educated on that, who can do that on their own, because then you probably have a lot of these event synchronization workshops in parallel, and you probably need a good plan if you want to do that with 450 people in a quarter, but it's possible, I think, from the experience that I have.
Interesting.
I mean, this means that you are going in with, say, I don't know, maybe a full-size Scrum team or 2 full-size Scrum team, depending on the size of the solution train of agile coaches who are well educated, and this is not a part of the quarter. So this is something that has to be done before. Like when you say, I'm really launching 450 people, and I need 2 full-size Scrum teams, say around like 20, 25 people, who are then doing the coaching, doing the workshops and all these things, then probably you need a couple of months before so that
Yeah.
they understand the whole thing.
So let me add another slice in here. Let's see how I go here. If I was to take that upper level, I don't know how I do vertical text here. It's cheap. So here's my question to you, and I'm going to ask it visually. Am I doing a PR planning here? Am I doing a PR planning there?
Oh, this is a good question. Because like the first thing is you're not doing a PI planning, but and this really depends on the size of the transformation. So it's I'm copying that.
So
So
let's it's all right, I gotcha.
either planning
There we go.
conference.
That's all right. I got it.
You already have it. So
Yeah.
either you have really just a single solution train, and a solution train meaning 450 people or less.
Yep.
If you have just 450 people or less, then after you know what your solution areas is, you're doing a planning conference first.
Yeah. So planning conference about them.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly. And from the planning conference, from the output of the planning conference, you derive the agile release trains, because only after the planning conference you know which solution areas actually have to closely collaborate with other solution areas.
Yep.
Now, after you have derived the structure, then you are going into the PI plannings. Like you're creating a roadmap. From the roadmap, you derive the collaboration structure of the solution areas. Then you are creating the arts, and then so that also could mean when you're starting fresh, saying we have to do save for teams or something, then save for teams really happens only there. Save for teams, and
So
then they
you're
are.
following much more the old style rally, ready, set, go, form the teams, get the teams moving before we turn them into a train type agenda. You're not doing quick starts.
So here in that step, I think a quick start is a decent pattern, saying if I have the larger roadmap for the solution train, if I know what they are doing, then I can derive the collaboration structure of the solution areas, and from that I can derive the structure of the trains. Now I have the structure of the trains, and now I can go into a quick start approach, saying, hey,
But
let's do then save
but
for teams.
why am I going to bother with say for teams? If I've got a team, if I've formed a team or a group of teams in solution areas and they've started working together in solution areas and they've been working together in solution areas for 3 or 4 sprints, I had to do some level of training to get that happening.
Yeah,
I don't
absolutely.
get why I'm going to bother with say for teams, personally.
So for the people in the teams, it's the next level of encapsulation. Like they may be individuals in a traditional environment, and they may not have been part of a team before. Now you're forming teams, and now on top of the teams, you're forming solution areas.
But
Now there is a planning conference.
hang on a second though. It doesn't
Yeah.
work. I've done a whole bunch of work. This team has freshly created. They've synchronized events. They've agreed on synchronized roles and artifacts and collaborations. And then I'm coming back and going, oh, here's the template for how you do all of that.
You're right. Maybe the Safer Teams material is not ideal in that situation. Maybe
if you're going to use Safer Teams, I'm personally going to argue for me. Oh, I don't think I cleaned out properly. For me, I'm going to argue I want Safer Teams there.
could be. So
So
I've never did it there.
the whole point of a Safer Teams in the quick start process is it's a team formation event. You're a team. You're going to sit together as a team with your Scrum Master and product owner, and you're going to spend 2 days in a training room together. You're going to learn about agility. You're going to learn about agile principles and values. You're going to learn about what makes a good story. You're going to learn about story splitting and story estimation. You're going to play crazy games with scrum balls and see who can drop the ball and throw it fastest. And we're going to set you up to form good patterns together before you start working together. So I'm going to argue that if I'm going to get them to play together here, I've got to do Safer Teams early. I'm done there, right?
That makes a lot of sense. For me, why I usually did that later was because usually when I was called in, there was like the safe transformation driving the whole transformation. When there was something on top in addition to it, then this was more like, yeah, do whatever it takes to make that work out, but we want to have a safe transformation. And so the quick start approach, which actually says do it in 1 week, was like the standard pattern that was given. And so I had to deal with the standard pattern. Now, shifting that, and to be honest, now that I have a deeper understanding of the whole process, because I tried it out in different occasions, probably it's the better thing that what you're proposing. I've never did it that way, but it's absolutely something that would be good to try out, to do it earlier on.
See, for me, there's a lot of confusion about the quick start. Let me let me share my quick start. So this is my quick start, right? So my quick start is predicated on the fact that I got a whole bunch of teams currently doing a day job, and we're going to pick our launch moment as being some appropriate moment for us to transition into safe. And maybe they're already working on things. We're going to go, when's your next release? Let's do it straight after your next release. We're going to pick a date.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to run, as I mentioned, 6 to 8 weeks. And my whole process is predicated on the idea that says most of the team members will not join the train and the teams until the week of the quick start. Right? So if I've thought about everybody who's going to be on the train, I go, in the beginning, right? Because when you join the train, you're dedicated to the train. In the beginning, I want just the release train engineer, the product manager, the architect, and extended leadership team members. Right? Because that's the team that's going to launch the train.
Mm-hmm.
Not long after that, I want the product owners. because the biggest job to do getting ready to do the quick start is actually preparing the features,
Mhm.
having a good backlog ready to go into PR planning. Um, then ideally, I'd like the system team a couple of weeks before PR planning, so I can
Yep.
bootstrap up my environments and my pipelines and make sure my devs will have environments and branches and things to play in on day one after PR planning.
Mhm.
Then the week before PR planning, my Scrum Masters kick in. Um, A, so that I can send them on Scrum Master training. B, so that they can be helping do the final prep for PR planning. And then
Yep.
week eight is the quick start. And that's the first date that most of the team members switch into this world. Right. And I'm
Yeah,
basically
yeah.
saying, hey, you're transitioning now. We've done a lot of work, right? We've had some people going crazy for 6 or 7 weeks, getting things ready, figuring out the best team structures, names in boxes, roles, blah, 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 blah. Now you're going to come in and you're going to sit and you're going to spend your 2 days in, say, for teams training with your team, getting to know them. Then you're going to do a PR planning. Right.
Mhm.
Now, what you're doing is you're basically saying, I want the teams working together in their new team structure way before that week,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
Right.
You're moving, you're bringing your structural change into being back here. That's your moment. You've gone, let's figure out what structure makes sense by looking at your collaboration patterns.
Yep.
And then you've gone, let's move into it. And
Mhm.
having moved into it, that is, if you're going to use Safe Teams, you use it there. And I would argue that you've got a piece here plus
Yeah.
in the Wolfgang world, there's an addendum.
Yeah, that probably makes sense.
Right, because you're going to teach them, I assume, your 3x3 event design techniques and
Yeah, absolutely.
right.
I
Um,
love that.
so it means that the whole notion of quick start's a waste of time because you're just bootstrapping your way in.
Yep. Now I have to think about it. So, I mean, when we follow the guidelines of Scaled Agile, then Scaled Agile says you can do safer teams earlier, but it shouldn't be more than 6 to 8 weeks earlier than the actual train launch, like 1.5 months to 2 months earlier.
So
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 that would still fit into that pattern.
so let's think about why, right? Now, the quick start, when I heard about the quick start, when Dean showed me that slide, I went, no way, never in hell. Right? I almost vomited when I saw that slide. And I wasn't alone. Um, because I went, there's no way it could be a good training experience when you have 100 plus people in the training room at the same time. Um, y- you know, oh my goodness, the list of reasons I had for not doing it was long. Um, but I also had a belief that said you want to link training to application. So if you send someone on Safer Teams, you want to know that they're going to be working in an agile team within 2 weeks of going on Safer Teams. And that's what the recommendations are pushing to is don't put a gap between putting people in safer teams and them starting to work as an agile team. Because you want to take the momentum you establish in the room with the safer teams and you want to transition that into application. It's why the quick start recipe is so beautiful, because you go, you're training in safer teams, and then you literally the next day you are an agile team. You're in PI planning, and then you go into sprint one. When I eventually got forced to do a quick start because it was the only way we could meet some timelines for a given train, I actually loved it. And I loved it because, well, the biggest reason was that I had found when I ran the teams training, what I used to do was to go, oh, look, we'll run half a dozen small teams trainings over the month before PR planning,
Mhm.
um, so that I can keep my room size to, 20, less than 24 people. Uh, maybe we'll do 3 teams at a time. Uh, and that way we can have a quality training experience. But then what would happen was that they'd never attend as a team. By that stage we had the teams, but they were busy with their day job. They hadn't yet been released to the new team. And so you'd set out going, I'm going to teach you as a team. And then you'd wind up going, there's 2 people from this team and 1 person from that team and 2 people from the other team. So you get none of the team bonding. You get none of the team sort of engaging with the principles and the values together as a team, because they're sitting with some random group of people at a table, and you get no shared context because you can't feed them a feature that they're going to work on for their exercises, because you've got a random group of people at the table. And I was
Yeah.
like, oh wow, okay, there's all, when you do it as a quick start, they're going to all be there, right? You're going to be able to sit them as a team. You're going to be able to get all of that stuff out of it. And yes, it's not as wonderful as when you've only got 24 people in the room, but you can compensate for that because the training scales pretty well. You just put extra facilitators in the room for the activities. Um,
Absolutely.
so if I look at the model here that I've just butchered your 5 steps with, I don't believe we're breaking any rules here, because we're saying we're going to run safer teams, and then you're going to be those teams. Right?
Yeah.
We're running safer teams to kickstart you into your solution area. And you're
Yeah.
going to come out of safer teams, and tomorrow you're going to be teams in a solution area. Um, and we're actually going to secure you. You're going to turn up because tomorrow you're going to be part of this new team. What you're just doing is you're moving them into their new teams and giving them a few sprints in their new teams before their first PR planning.
This is not bad. So this is a pattern that I've never thought about in that way, but this is not bad. So probably I have to have a couple of more thoughts on that. But thank you for the input, because yeah, it makes sense. I've never looked at it that way, that actually you are like, even though you may not be a full-size train with 4 teams, but you are a mini train already. And so the concepts that you're teaching in Safe for Teams actually makes sense for a solution area, because in a way it already behaves like a mini train.
Yeah.
Of course, there are other aspects to that, but there is a certain truth that they are already a mini train.
The only thing that you teach in safe team that is not relevant at this point is PR planning. But
Yeah, but
you can come
later on,
back and you can do a PR planning simulation with them just before PR planning.
or the Safe City workshop.
That may be exactly what I've done a few times.
So where would you put the Safe City workshop in? So after the planning conference, then the arts are built, and then
So if you think about building an art, and we know that an art comes to life, an art becomes an art at its first PR planning. So I look at the building the art there and go, you're post-processing what came out of your planning conference to go, these are the logical arts based on what we can see from the planning conference. And putting the glue together. I don't see that being a huge amount of work going on in this building the arts bit. But there's a gap in time because I've got to actually do some post processing from the planning conference before PR planning.
Yep, exactly.
I don't think I'm doing an immense amount of building art, like work building arts. I'm just confirming who's the RTE. I'm probably filling in some gaps about product management, although realistically, I would expect my product management would be more aligned to solution areas than arts,
Yeah,
right?
it is like that. Yes, exactly.
Um, but if you do it like this is where you might do Safe City PR planning or geek books, etc.
Hmm.
Just run as an event.
I mean, then you could do that in the quick start approach pattern, like you're doing, I don't know, 1 or 2 days of safe city simulation, and then you're jumping into the PI plannings of the trains.
So there's been a couple of times I've done that, um, where I've got called in for a rescue, um, where they weren't planning to do Safe for Teams, um, and they've asked me to rescue them, and I've done people a favour because I normally go, if you're not going to give your team Safe for Teams, then I'm not going to sell you my services because it wouldn't be ethical to put teams into the hopper without Safe for Teams training. Um, But I've had a couple of RTEs call me and go, "Hey, will you do a day workshop with my teams before their first PR planning?" Um, and what we do is that we do let's do the Safe City PR planning simulation. Um, let's talk our way through the agenda of PR planning, what you can expect, what's going to happen, and you do kind of a half a day on that. Um, but then what I do is I actually give them more time to practice writing objectives. Um, because it's really hard to write good objectives for Safe City PR planning, as it's also really hard to write good objectives for real PR planning. So, so you do some Q&As, you do a more extended version of the planning simulation. Um, you might look at the types of stories that they've been playing with in their last few sprints
Hmm.
and go, let's look at the patterns you've been using, where you've been having anti-patterns. Can we talk about why they're anti-patterns? Can we take the features that you're going to use tomorrow and perhaps do an hour of practice story breakdown from your features that are coming up in your PI planning? You really easily put a day of PI planning prep in there,
Yeah,
um, so that the teams walk into their PI planning feeling confident, um, because they've had that day of prep.
this is a great idea. Thank you. Thank you for that pattern. And so I put two more yellow ribbons here. So like this is all true for when you have only up to 450 people. Now, what happens when you have a larger part of the organization that you want to transform? Maybe you have 1,000 people or 2,000 people. And then before you go into the planning conference, you have to have a roadmap conference on a higher level where you're not
Let,
really
let, let,
deciding.
let me stop
Yep.
you, Wolfgang.
Yep.
I'm going to stop you.
Hmm.
Right. If I want 5 steps to set up a solution train, do I want to add the how do I do 2,000 people?
This is probably true. Yeah. Not at that point. Yeah. Maybe I should just like write a note on the slide saying, hey, if you want to do more, it could be done, but then we have to talk about different patterns.
um, yeah, I think anytime you try and build a picture like this, you're going, this is for a typical scenario.
Yeah.
If you're trying to mobilize 2,000 people at once, I'm not going to suggest that we do it out of my standard recipe.
I have a different standard recipe for that.
And you're fundamentally at that point, you're saying there's some techniques that would probably be added to this in the fullness of time, which you don't need on day one because it's, you're bootstrapping your way in. That as the numbers grow to 2,000, life gets more complicated. You have to bring forward some of the advanced techniques. But
Yeah.
I don't think if you're going to do 5 steps to setting up a solution train, you've not got to solve world hunger. And this is your favorite temptation is I've got to solve world hunger. So
Somehow, somewhen we will solve that. I'm pretty sure. But thank you for the input. And you had another picture to the top right
I
of what we
was just going to go, identifying areas of collaboration.
Mhm.
This is my favorite picture for talking about areas of collaboration.
I love that.
It probably
So
suggests to you it's not a very well structured train, right?
at least it's a challenge, I would say.
However, time is marching on. I just looked at my watch and went, "Ooh, I should get some sleep."
Oh, yeah.
So,
Thank you. That really helped me. That really helped me a lot.
there we go. We did something constructive with our night as well.
So that means on what we discussed, on the basis of what we discussed, I will now change the presentation and the next. I mean, when I'm doing this session with Eric, should we also do it here on shaping agility and stream it?
Why not?
Thank you. So this was time well spent for me. Again, as usual.
Always fun, mate. Take care, and I'll chat to you soon.
Yeah, you too.
Ciao.
Bye.